Suspicious glares and mutters accompanied Aina and Ada all the way through the Sander district until they ended up in their usual tavern, or rather, the closest thing to a tavern one could find in there. The Lucky Bastard, so called in honour of the owner's late husband, who was struck dead by a lightning bolt after walking out of a gambling house. The three were clearly mad at him, though not quite as much as his wife. She surely made peace with the memory of him after finding his secret earnings and opening the tavern. If that doesn't give you a clear idea of the type of gents that frequented the establishment, suffice to say that they let Gyof play in it. Ida peeked in, looking with apprehension as a few deer scattered across the tavern. Anyone capable of ignoring the aberrations Gyof played probably deserved to be in there. Is he that bad? A quick look back at Aina revealed her eagerness to quiet Gyof using her fists. She noticed Ada's expression and quickly put her hands behind her back.
Hey, you promised you'd be quiet. You swore over Bartet. He'll smite you.
Aina took a hand to her forehead and pretended to swoon. She actually miscalculated and fell on her butt, smitten indeed.
I'm serious, boss. This is the only place that lets Mr. Bart play anymore. I can't get in trouble here. Do it for me.
And there went Aina's plan for the night. Okay, we're inside. Everyone turned toward the duo as they walked into the bar, with faces that went from awe to ire. The barkeep, upon noticing Ada, quickly rushed to his side.
There you are, Adder. Just the man I wanted to stab today. Go tell that asshat friend of yours to tune that stupid piece of...
Aina's eyes met the barkeep's. She paled. Aina smiled. Though Ada would have you believe otherwise, Aina storming off was hardly an uncommon event. It was, in fact, how most of her arguments with her father ended up, since she could not quite defend her own causes. Some strange events tended to occur concurrently. One night, an enormous hole appeared in one of the city walls. One day, the sun rose to reveal that Baitat's statue was missing its 2-story tall sword. Most recently, someone removed all of the pavement from the northeastern quarter of the central plaza. An extremely sharp dagger was the only clue the thief left behind. But of course, Ada didn't believe that his beloved boss had anything to do with any form of nocturnal vandalism.
Wait. What? You...
Oh, right. Mrs. Barkeep, this is my boss, Aina.
Aina?
Aina tilted her head up slightly to let Ada pat her head affectionately. Still in such a cute position, she turned her eyes toward the barkeep in a killing glare.
Aina! Of course. I didn't know it was like that. Give me just a...
Is everyone scared of her?
You bunch of twats better get your asses out of this place immediately! These two want some space!
There was no answer to the barkeep's order. Aina reached for the hammer on her back.
There's no need for that. We'll just try to fit in a corner or something.
Ada took a deep breath as Aina placed the hammer back on her belt, sending just one last look of disappointment his way. She's a threat. Gaius's barely cohesive poetry became clearer as they reached the back of the tavern, though the bard seemed too occupied with his performance to notice them yet. They managed to find an empty space where they could barely fit together, though their designated room on the floor became considerably bigger after Aina curled her lips at the deer around them.
You know the barkeep, boss?
Yeah, she seems to know everyone, and everyone's scared of her. No way. She had to be confusing Aina with some other green-haired albino that wandered from tavern to tavern, once a moon demanding a little tip in exchange for not raising the place to the ground. Easy mistake to make. Once seated, Aina called to the barkeep with a deep menacing growl. She rushed to their side immediately.
Yes, miss?
Aina pointed to a cup and raised 2 fingers. The barkeep clearly didn't need a translation, but Aina's request didn't seem to cheer Ada up as it should have.
Make that just one. I ain't got enough money, and I don't feel like drinking anyway.
But Aina felt like making him drink, of course. She brought out a shiny dolloo from Ilgrab's gift, pointed to herself and then to Ada.
Thanks, boss. But really, I don't wanna. I said no thanks.
Aina tried to push 2 coins into the barkeep's hand, while Ada tried to pull her hand away quite fruitlessly.
Aina, we talked about this. You can't just go ordering me around after work, damn it. What if I don't want to go to your room?
Huh?
What? Both Aina and the barkeep looked at each other, then they looked at Ada as he pursed his lips together.
Get drunk. I mean, I want to get drunk.
Wow, Freudian slip. Pitiful scream of self-loathing. Ada was already bringing himself enough shame, so Aina kindly overpaid the barkeep in a desperate action to make her go away. Once the barkeep left, she took one of Ada's hands and pulled it away from his eyes, trying to take a good look at his face. She would have had better luck looking for faces in the mould covering the walls.
Doth mine ears deceive me, or is that the tinkling of coins I hear?
There he is. None other than Gyof finally returned toward them with a very calculated nonchalantness, plucking the strings of a perpetually out-of-tune oud. Aina pulled her ears down and sighed audibly.
Goodness gracious! If it isn't Ladder! Accompanied by the petite patroness, no less! Of all the miserable taverns in this loathsome city!
They both knew that Gyof had been expecting Ada and had clearly seen them walk in, but why stay high like a normal person?
Evening, Mr. Bard.
I know what time of the day it is, thank you very much. I'm painfully sober yet. Or at least sober enough to recognize a moon in the sky, and a lad eaten up by his misgivings when I see one. Aina, what did you tell Adder to make him wail like that? Oh, woe is me! So young and I'm turning hard of hearing. Speak up, dearie.
Well, rude. Aina's teeth gritted, one against the other, loud enough for Ada to hear. They exchanged a very serious look, one that said, "Don't." A series of strangely precise grunts and gestures followed one another, under the expectant attention of the bard. Afterward, they both looked at Ada until he finally relented.
She wants you to keel over and die.
Yeah, gonna translate for her.
Why? Is she too lazy to kill me herself?
Well, these guys are not friends.
It was a question, not an invitation. But of course, that kind of subtlety doesn't fare so well around the likes of you.
Aina was considering how best to break Gaia's snout in a single strike, but Ada fulminated the bard with a look before Aina had so much a chance to grunt.
Ah! Cut me with the sword if thou must, but wound me not with the knives in thine eyes. Not you, Cabbage Head. I know you'll do both gladly.
Hey, stop picking on her.
Picking on her? Goading her a little counts as a provocation now? 'Tis but a jest between old friends. Very old friends. Aina knows it, doesn't she? Doesn't she?
I said stop that, Bard.
Me? She's the one that casually throws people out of windows.
That's 'cause y'all make her mad.
Guards? Guards? Yes, see, my friend broke a buck's spine, but that's okay, 'cause she was mad!
Ada was about to reply, but the barkeep finally arrived with 2 cups filled to the top, where she surely hadn't spit in at all.
Just the thing to keep me goading.
Gyof grabbed one of the drinks before Aina had a chance to grab hers. She rose up from her seat, livid.
Wait. I'll pay you back for that one. Here, you can have mine instead.
Aina took a brief look at the edge of the cup. It was covered with foam, which meant that Ada had taken a sip, which meant that his lips had been there, which meant...
No, she can't have that one either. Aina's not old enough to drink. At least formally, And she's never getting older.
well, indirect kiss. Just as Gyof was about to drink from his cup, Aina snatched her drink back and gulped the beer down.
I'd say I hope you choke on it, but you can't even do that.
Wow. Aina proceeded to spit the drink all over Gyof's face and then slammed the cup against the table, leaving a crater in the metal sheet. Gyof dragged his hand down his face, trying to get some beer off his fur. He was trembling slightly, but laughing all the same.
All this time thinking you were a golem, and it turns out you're just a misshapen walking fountain.
Well, they're very, very not friends.
Will you just stop acting like children?
The whole tavern stared at Ada's outburst. Once shame caught up to him, the rose sat down again, heaving a long sigh. Aina and the completely soaked Gyof looked at each other absolutely flabbergasted. They both understood.
Color me surprised. I must admit that being lectured in maturity by Mr. There's a beast in my pile of hay was the last thing I was expecting today. Indeed, this is no time to squabble. It's been forever and a half since we 3 last shared an evening together. And if it was about me, this would be the last. So I really need to know. What on the face of Dakna is wrong with you?
I'm fine.
You're as fine as muscular I am, my lad. Come on, you can surely tell your best friend about it.
Sorry, Bard. This is one of those things I can't tell anyone. Not even Aina.
Gyoff's eyes and lips narrowed until they both formed a line. Though wounded, he attempted to smile once more.
Uh-huh. We'll go with fine then. Look at her, I know you're positively fine, but you've been just a little quieter than usual. As in, not blowing my eardrums quiet. Why are you so fine?
I just have a lot on my mind right now.
Yes, I noticed you spend your nights moaning.
Okay, look. I'm worried about someone.
Worried? Oh boy, you're gonna
Look
go
at Aina.
blind if you keep worrying so much.
Don't say that kind of stuff in front of Aina!
Why? Is she not the one for whoops thy heart weeps?
What?
What?
I'm going to give you the chance of your life here. Do you want to sleep with Aina?
Oh wow. Wow. Ada got so flustered that he almost flipped the table. Aina suddenly lacked the dexterity to find any of her many weapons and the accuracy to wrap her hands around Gyoff's neck.
Is that a yes?
It's a gazelle, okay?
Ada immediately dunked his face in the drink. Gyoff's jaw fell to the ground. Aina forgot how to breathe. The bard proceeded to spill the contents of a cup all over the plate, banging the table with a fist and laughing over the top of his lungs. Aina's cheeks swelled up as she tried her best not to cackle.
Wait! All that melodrama! Just for some bar hot lass?
That's not what...
This couldn't be sweeter, oh you're a horn-eater. This poor hobo was so mistaken, you see. Thought you'd cry for a golem, but you're just too wholesome.
Stop with the golem thing! It's not about me being a horn eater or not. Something happened that night, and I'm worried about her.
Ah, yes. I'm sure a lot of things happened that night. Or didn't, from the look on your face. You know, there's not a face unbeknownst to this bard. So tell me which Zell has been touching your neck.
Leave me alone, Gyof.
Wow, touchy. Anyway, I'm glad to hear that you're a healthy deer with healthy obsessions that don't include lifelike dolls with a penchant for smithery. I'll leave you two friends to your business dinner.
Rude. Am I even sure that these guys are friends? I don't know. With that, Gyoff got up from his seat. Instead of going back to playing his horrible songs, however, he headed to the back door, muttering things under his breath all the while. Aina's eyes finally drifted back to Ada. He turned red like a tomato.
Gyof. What a bard, am I right? He really said some crazy stuff. Sorry, boss. I need a moment.
Follow Gyoff or stay with Ada? Ooh, I don't know. What should we do? Let's follow Gyoff. If anyone could give Aina some definitive insight on Ada's problem, it was the man that shared a room with him. That came out wrong. Considering that Ada wouldn't miss her much in the state of despair that he was in, Aina snaked out right after Gyoff. Alright, let's check out what this guy is doing. He's definitely up to something. She quietly closed the door behind her, taking a good look at the labyrinth of shady streets that manifested itself in front of her eyes. Needless to say, the bard was nowhere to be seen. Keep looking. Her nose twitched slightly. She knew Gyoff was around, somewhere. Aina began trudging through the dark alleys that made up Standard District, following the scent of broken dreams and time. Shrubs and deer alike avoided her wherever she went. The city knew her eyes. They knew the sound of her steps. Everyone would know if she grabbed a bag and left the city all of a sudden. Not for long, but they would know. And yet she didn't know anything about the people staring at them. They had no names for her. They were just faces in the background. She wouldn't miss them if they disappeared. Aina walked around a corner and then nervously walked back, lost in the maze of her own undoing. Perhaps she knew the names of the people that felt the same way about her. Oh, there he is. Aina turned around at once, grabbing the idiot that dared startle her by the neck, and she slammed him against the wall.
Aina! It's me! Your pal Gyof! Gyof, son of a guy!
Indeed he was, and now the thought of rendering the bard unable to speak another word for quite a while briefly crossed her mind. It was quickly followed by the image of Ada berating her for it. Aina's little inner Ada won the battle. She put Gyof back on the ground, where he struggled to get his breath back. Losing the only person that was better than her at sneaking around would almost be a shame anyway.
That's it? Wow, you've really gone soft, Shorty. So, what makes you follow a handsome rogue down a dark alley? Are you that heartbroken?
Aina covered her right eye with a hand and then shrugged.
Ah, Adder. Yeah, well, isn't it obvious? He's love-struck. Or love-lorn. Love something. And I'm ecstatic to hear that it's not for you.
This is so rude. Strangling Gyof suddenly became the #1 priority once more, until she realised that he looked as uncomfortable about Ada's ordeal as she did. Aina knitted her eyebrows together. She could barely believe what she was gonna do. Gathering all her strength to quiet down her more violent urges, she pointed at Gyof and then shrugged again.
Me? You wanna know what I think? Ugh, Aina, you can't just be nice all of a sudden. It's too weird. Look, I just hope that his heart is hurting for a nice kitchen maid, not that spoiled little...
Gyof muttered something to himself, then he took his hand to his chin, humming quietly.
Where did that dumbass even find the time to find a lass, though? I recall we went looking for you. I met a guy, and that's where I drop off the face of Dakna. What do you have, Shorty?
Aina tried to think back to the day of the fair, the night she spent wreaking havoc of course, and the next morning Ada lectured on her as usual for running away without him. But the day of the fair... Aina raised her hand in the air, and then she stretched out 2 fingers to make them walk over her hand. Then she took the hand that was walking and smashed it in the nearest wall, leaving a hole in it. Gyof merely gave her a blank stare. Indeed, she didn't know how Ada running through a wall was relevant either. Aina shook her head. At least she managed to gather some second-hand information from what Ada told Ilgrab, so maybe they could figure something out together. So yeah, Ada met Jasif, or Sep, and yeah, these guys don't know about it.
Okay, maybe he just didn't say she was a gazelle, but he surely talked about her. What would an idiot in love say? Poems. Her mien. Did he talk about the marks on her face? Or her hair? How about her eyes? Did he recite about 4 verses full of similes, specifically likening her irises to sapphires or the sea?
No.
Okay, I need to get in character. I'm a huge mass of muscles that likes girls. Okay, what do I want? Her bosom? No, gazelles don't have any of that. Her horns? Nah, you'd have noticed mine. Their fur is yellow, and so is he. Okay, that doesn't help. Come on, Gyof, you know gazelles better than anyone. They have a tail and... Wait, tail. That's it! Her butt! Did he talk about anyone's butt?
Aina didn't really want to recall all the times that Ada had spoken about butts, but she did it all the same. No, Ada hadn't said a single thing about anyone's butt recently, except maybe hers. Aina never thought she'd feel sad about such a sentence.
Oof, good. I was afraid I'd have to choke someone. Oh, wait, one more question. Just to be sure. Did he mention anyone booping him?
He did. Aina vaguely recalled Ada screaming at Illigrab that someone had booped him, whatever that meant. Aina nodded. Gaia's face turned into an expression of pure unadulterated horror.
No, that has to be illegal somehow. Oh, God, no!
Yeah, the pennies dropped, he's worked it out.
All right. Breathe in, breathe out. Keep your temper in check, Gyof. Okay. Remember when I said that I'd be fine with him being with anything but a golem? This is the exception to the rule. I'll give you my blessings, I'll play at your wedding, I'll do anything you want. But I beg you, no, I implore you, keep her away from him, or else they'll... Oh, God, no! I'm imagining it! Look, I can't handle this. I can't look him in the face right now. I'm going home. Oh, gods, I have to tell Taylead. No, wait, no, he mustn't know.
A sudden concert of harmonic bells is the last thing one should expect in the slums. and yet a one Bahan band hurried in their direction. Gyof wasted no time.
Get your hands off
Oh, there
my
she
lad,
went.
badass!
What did you just say?
There she is! Aina lacked all of a sudden the mental capability to point at the culprit hiding behind her. There was too much on her mind.
I don't have time for this.
The gazelle ran away, trying futilely to hold the bells that hung from her sash together so they'd stop ringing.
All right, that feels a lot better. Come on, Cabbage, we have to head back to the tavern. It's time for you and I to get back to work. Let us never speak about this again. Should be easy,
Rude.
Oh, by the way, I'm keeping this as a consultancy fee.
Gyof shook Aina's purse eagerly. She was kind enough to just bend his arm the wrong way instead of removing it from his body, since it wasn't her money anyway.